Okay, let's cover some shaping with a Procera as an inline device. So when we're using a Procera PRE in Sonar, when we create an address list, this corresponds to a net object in a Procera. And a net object is really exactly what a address list is in Sonar. It's a group of IPs or subnets, and these can be IPv4 or IPv6 that we then use to impose some kind of policy. So there's a lot we can do with the Procera, and this is by no means going to go through every single aspect of the Procera. We're going to focus in this video on creating a very simple basic shaper, and we'll go into some more in-depth things later. So I have my Procera open here. I'm going to click on the little signpost up here to go to my Objects and Rules editor. And you can see I now have this open. So if I open up my objects tree and look in Net Objects, you'll see there's a Sonar object that gets created, and inside that we create one object for every address list. So I have 5 address lists I have set up here, and you'll notice if we expand these, there's nothing in them, and you'll get this little warning saying it's automatically generated. The reason there's nothing in them is when we create net objects through the Procera, we do this the same way that Procera does with the PSM product. We create what they call a dynamic net object, and that cannot be seen in the editor here, but you will see it in the live view when you're looking at traffic in real time. Let's just create a standard net object so you can see the difference. If I was creating a standard net object called everything, and I put an item in it and said, let's say it was the network 0000/0, then when we look at this object, you'll see we have the network in there. Again, when we look at the Sonar ones, we don't. But don't worry about that. The IPs are in there, and you'll see them in the live view. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to create some shaping objects and some shaping rules to impose some kind of policy. So let's say, for example, I have this address list called My Data Service, and that's a 5 meg down and 1 meg up service. We need to create a shaping object for it, and then create a shaping rule to implement that object. So let's start with the object. If I right-click in Shaping Objects and do New Object, I'm going to call this My Data Service for consistency. Split by, very important. If you leave this on None, all of your customers will share a single shaper, which is definitely not what we want. So we're going to do Split by Subscriber, and again, subscriber is that special object that would normally be created by a Procera PSM that we're creating directly with Sonar, and a subscriber is an individual customer. So one account, if they have multiple IPs on their account, they all go into the same subscriber object and they'll all get shaped together. So we pick subscriber, and then we have to pick the subscriber net object. So we're going to drill down into Sonar, and we're going to pick My Data Service. So other options we can configure in here, we'll get into these in a later video. Don't sweat them too much right now for just this initial setup. We're going to leave them as is. So down here I have the option to show my rate in kilobits per second or megabits per second. I'm just going to switch this to meg since we're doing pretty even 5:1. My incoming traffic, so my download traffic, is going to be 5 megs. My outgoing traffic, my upload, is going to be 1 meg. And there we have it. We have a simple shaping object, My Data Service. If I open it up, it's split by subscriber, split on the net object that contains the subscribers that have that service, and we're setting our limit to 5:1. So, very simply what this is saying is everybody that exists inside this address list, My Data Service, will get 5:1 each. But, in order to make that happen, we need to make a shaping rule. So we go down to Shaping Rules, we're going to right click and do New Rule, and we're going to call this My Data Service again. We're going to leave priority and precedence alone, leave fair factor. Again, we'll talk about some of these things later. But all we need to do is add some conditions. So I'm going to add a new condition. I'm going to say, if we come down and look at all our different options here, we're going to look in local net objects. We're going to look in Sonar. And if it's in My Data Service, so if the local net object is in My Data Service, we're going to come over here and click on Shaping Objects. We're going to apply the My Data Service shaping object. So now if I look at this rule, it's saying if the local net object is in Sonar My Data Service, we're going to apply the My Data Service shaping object. So let's run through that super quick. We made a shaping object, split by subscriber. splitting on the net object that corresponds to the service, and this is created by the address list in Sonar. We're going to limit it to 5 by 1, and then we're going to have a rule that says if the local net object is in my data service, apply the shaping object. So you're going to have one shaping object per data service, one shaping rule per data service, and when we're done, click the disk, we're going to commit, and we're done.